orange Ferrari. And green flag flies, we're racing. The Acura gets a great start from behind. 3 wide up the inside. Closing in on him here through turn number 2. Big slide on corner entry.
Here's, that's a big aggressive dive up the inside there from the Lamborghini. Some bragging rights here, I think, between the two. Look at that slide up ahead from Simpson. That thing was totally sideways, but he was able to catch it.
Fantastic stuff here in the M. Big chop by the 777 car off the nose of that. Saw the corner, didn't have overlap, and went right to the apex. Checkered flag, and Adam Youngblood will win the AM race in the CrowdStrike Cup Virtual Racing League and pick up a checkered flag, a wet one here at the Huntsville Range. Jimmy Morgan.
Soldiers, sailors, airmen and women enlist in the armed forces for many reasons, including a sense of duty, patriotism, the adventure, travel, and adrenaline. When service members are injured or wounded and can no longer perform their military duties, they quickly find themselves removed from their team, no longer serving the purpose for which they trained.
I came back from Afghanistan in 2013, and it was kind of a trial and error of finding out, after the military, what's next in life.
Motorsports offers an opportunity to regain that sense of identity within a safe, fast-paced team environment, providing a renewed sense of purpose. Like in the military, in motorsports the goal is in accomplishing the mission, winning as a team, collectively celebrating the successes and supporting teammates through the losses. Operation Motorsport also offers virtual engagements and recovery opportunities through an iRacing league, engaging beneficiaries in a safe, competitive environment from the comfort and safety of their home. Operation Motorsport believes in the power of team, identity, and purpose.
Racetracks like this one just don't get built anymore. This place is one of the old school tracks. High speed, high stakes, and long straights. Spa-Francorchamps, nestled in this Belgian forest, is a spectacle even without racing. Tonight, though, we'll get to see both in Assetto Corsa Competizione for the CrowdStrike Cup Virtual Racing League's 3rd round in 2021. I'm Kyle Heyer alongside Ryan Green, and Ryan's preparing for the real 24 Hours of Spa at the end of the month. But tonight, Ryan, we get to go racing in the virtual version here at Spa. Welcome along. 2 races tonight, Pro-Am coming right up.
I love it, Kyle. Great to be back. Thanks so much for having me once again. Love this track as well. You said it perfectly at the open. They don't build a track like this anymore. Opened in 1921, 20 turns, 4.3 miles on the modern layout, and it's all spectacular. Great setting for racing. Should be a ton of fun tonight.
Very, very excited to get this racing underway. We've got qualifying right now, right, as we head down to the racetrack. Josh Staffen on the track at the moment, running in 5th. Again, he has transitioned over to this Acura NSX GT3 platform, and he has done very well, if you'll say that, this season. And right now in the number 23, he is running 6th, but has yet to put down a lap time. At the top, it's Ian Burleson. He's running a CrowdStrike livery. You'll notice the 3 different colorings on the number boards. Red are the SRO and Operation Motorsport drivers, the gray the AWS teams, and the white are the CrowdStrike drivers, Ryan. So qualifying at Spa in a 12-car grid for a 40-minute race, perhaps not the most important thing, but drivers are certainly going to try to do their best here.
No doubt, and I think it'll give us some sense for the pecking order when the race begins. Starting up front will help from the standpoint of it keeps you clear of some of the trouble that breaks out at the start of the race. I think you're right, Spa maybe less so than a place like the Nürburgring or Misano or some of the other stops we've seen. You might see a little bit less chaos and carnage right at the start of the race here than some of those other places, but nevertheless, starting up front does keep you a bit more secure from that standpoint, and no doubt about it, these guys will be pushing hard to secure the best starting spot they can.
Well, let's have a look here at Spa-Francorchamps from a look from the aerial perspective here, Ryan. It all starts with a run down from La Source, turn number 1, all the way down through Eau Rouge. That is one of the most famous corners in motorsport, up through Radillon and onto the Kemmel Straight. This entire lap is like a roller coaster at over 150 miles an hour.
And that sums it up nicely. And actually, that famous Eau Rouge to Radillon portion, that's part of the original circuit, but not exactly. There was an old German Empire-era customs house at that spot initially, and there was a small chicane that went around it in the initial layout that used the public roads. Some 10 years after the opening of this facility, they changed that somewhat. It led to that iconic sweep up the hill at Radillon, and that has become a fixture of the Spa circuit ever since. Then that long run down the Kemmel Straight to Lacombe. If you exit La Source and get through Eau Rouge and Radillon at full throttle and don't lift, by the time you get to Lacombe, that's something like 1.3 miles of full throttle running. Then into that quick right-left sweep at Lacombe, into Bruxelles, that never-ending carousel of a corner that starts up high and then drops down low and sets you up for that brilliant section, Pouhon into Campus, and then into the fast sections after you exit Stavelot-Blanchimont. Absolutely one of the iconic corners in motorsports. That's been part of this circuit since the very beginning as well. Into the famous bus stop chicane, finally back to the La Source hairpin, and you're doing it all over again.
It is an amazing lap around here, and this racetrack has basically graced every simulator and every racing game that has, international circuits for a reason. It's just one of those places that you associate with being a world-class facility. One of the old-school tracks that's been rearranged and reconfigured a handful of times, Ryan, but it still retains that classic style, the high speeds, the high stakes. Here's on board now with Bill Clark as we run down towards Eau Rouge. And I'm sure that even in Assetto Corsa Competizione, the realism we have here does not do this climb justice up to the top of Radillon.
Even still, though, you're clinching that steering wheel just that little bit tighter. You know how crucial that corner is. It's high commitment, whether we're talking about in a simulator like Assetto Corsa Competizione or in the real thing like we'll be doing at the end of the month with the Total Energies 24 Hours at Spa, which will have a CrowdStrike component to it, with the CrowdStrike racing team making the run over to Spa for the second straight year. Colin Brown and George Kurtz teaming up with the SPS Automotive team. A third driver, of course, part of that driver lineup too. That preliminary entry list actually came out earlier today. So a whole lot of excitement there. But here in the virtual world, that was Bruxelles, like I talked about. This is the Speaker's Corner, or now known as Jackie Ickx Corner. But it was known as Speaker's Corner for many, many years because it was only visible from the old PA stand back near the old pit straight. And you could hear the speaker on the microphone talking about who was leading the motor race coming through that corner. They were the only ones that could see it. So for many, many years, known as Speaker's Corner, recently redubbed Jackie Ickx Corner after the famous and highly accomplished Belgian Grand Prix and sports car driver.
Continuing on the lap here with Bill Clark, and we're going to head towards now the final chicane. This is a great passing opportunity. This has been restructured. It used to be of a bus stop style until a handful of years ago. Then it was kind of reconfigured into a more modern, very tight corner that allows for some more passing, but you're really leaning on the brakes around here. It's the one major slowdown that you face from basically the top of sixth gear all the way to the low end of second, maybe even first gear in some cars. It's so slow. You climb up a little bit of a hill here and back onto the front straightaway to do it all over again. And what does this get you? Well, 2 minutes and 17 seconds if you're Josh Staffen, and that's the time to beat right now. 2/10 off is Roman Alexinkov. 10 minutes left here in qualifying as Clark finishes a lap. We'll remind you what we're here for and what we're doing tonight. This is the CrowdStrike Cup Virtual Racing League, racing for all of 2021. We're on round number 3 of 6. We've got Brands Hatch on August 11th, September 22nd at Barcelona, then October 20th is the season finale at Paul Ricard. And again, CrowdStrike, internet security company, and all cloud-based because every second counts. And of course, with CrowdStrike, you win as one. And here also for GT World Challenge America, we've got the Nashville round coming up in a couple weeks' time, Ryan. That's an exciting round. Just the GT America series, which hopefully, I haven't seen a confirmed entry list, but expect to see CJ Moses there in the CrowdStrike AWS Mercedes AMG.
Yeah, I think you can count on that. I think it should be a very good entry list. All indications were that we might see some guest entries that aren't running the full GT America powered by AWS season, which is great. It's first time running on that track for anyone brand new street circuit, and great to see street racing back as part of SRO America. Last year, didn't see any of it. Some of that had to do with COVID. I guess we technically were down in St. Pete. We did see some cars on the track at one point for a practice session, but in the middle of that practice session, the red flag came out and everyone was told basically, it's time to go home now. We'll see you back at the track at some point in the indeterminate future, and we haven't been on a street course since. So it'll be great to have a return to street course racing. It's such a big part of GT racing globally, and I think there's every reason to believe that Nashville circuit is going to be not just a fan favorite, but a driver favorite. We were talking some about that off air, Kyle. Just looking at the track map, it looks like it's going to be a real challenge, some very interesting dynamics, most notably going over a rather lengthy and sizable bridge at one point, and I think that has everybody's attention.
Yeah, I think the bridge is going to be one of the most spectacular sights to see in all of motor racing for this year, and I'm very, very excited to see how that looks and to see how that races. That the track looks very exciting, and of course, being a street course, as you mentioned, it's been a while since we've seen World Challenge on a street course, and glad to be able to see that. Now, having a look here at the point standings for tonight, you'll notice the different number board colorations. Just as a reminder, the red number boards are the SRO and Operation Motorsport drivers, the gray are the AWS drivers, and the white are the CrowdStrike drivers, all competing for their own team. And it looks like, at least for now, the SRO and Opmo team performing very, very well. If you're not familiar with Operation Motorsport, Operation Motorsport is the official veteran charity of SRO America. Operation Motorsport is a veteran-led and operated not-for-profit serving American and Canadian medically retiring service members and veterans, and was founded on the basis of 3 simple words: excite, engage, and empower. The premise is to engage service members and veterans affected by military service through motorsport activities to aid in their recovery and rehabilitation. You can learn more at operationmotorsport.org. No Kevin Boehm here tonight, but Kevin Boehm's team in TC America has utilized Operation Motorsport for quite a bit and quite some time, and that they have found success, including a TCA championship last season, as they continue in the TC category this year, Ryan. So lots of exciting things. But going back to the standings, Josh Staffen, currently on provisional pole, is leading the standings by 23 points over Roman Alexinkov, who's second, and Vadim Mola in third. A long ways back, but they're third, 1, 2, 3 in the points and 1, 2, 3 on the track. No surprises there.
Yeah, exactly. We're starting to get some sense for the pecking order in this series month in and month out, and those are the names we've become accustomed to seeing at the top. But that's not to say we might not see a couple surprises at one point or another. Certainly Vadim Mola has been fast. Zach Coonan is capable. We've seen that in the past as well. Ian Burleson, certainly, who's back in 6th. We know that McLaren can be awfully rapid too, and we'll see how it takes to this Spa circuit. But you have to believe that car can be quick just about anywhere. I mean, look at the thing. That's really all you got to do, right? You look at that, and it just screams fast even before you hear it come by. It's a beautiful looking race car, and Ian very, very rapid behind the wheel too.
Got the opportunity to see one of these things in person at Circuit of the Americas earlier this year. It's just as swoopy in real life as it looks in the simulator, and the biggest shock to me was the doors open up. I thought that was really, really neat. I didn't know that they did that. A lot of times, you know, the fancy door mechanisms that you'll see on the road cars don't always transfer to the race car, but in this case they did, and it looks amazing. Another car that we haven't seen in the World Challenge paddock in a while is the Bentley Continental GT3. Here's Matt Gefeller. And he's got kind of a British racing green, kind of a brushed color on that car. It's a good looking color, and I think fits the chassis quite well. And it had some CrowdStrike graphics on the side. Boom.
Yeah, really sharp looking race car. Remarkably successful, especially the second generation of the Bentley Continental GT3. We saw it with the big triumph at the Bathurst 12-hour last year before everything shut down. And unfortunately, I'm not sure if you can necessarily say it was a casualty of COVID, but one way or the other, coming out of COVID, we don't see the Bentley factory backing behind teams in SRO America or over in Europe that we've seen in the past. In fact, there's just a single Bentley on the provisional entry list for this year's Total Energies 24 Hours of Spa. But it is a beautiful car. It is a popular car with the fans because it's different and it sounds fantastic. That low rumble as it goes by, you can't miss it. And it doesn't seem quite right not to have a whole herd of them on the grid as we've had in years past. That Bentley team has really channeled some of the early history of the brand, where it was the dominant car maker in endurance racing back in the 20s, in the early days of the 24 Hours of Le Mans and other long-distance endurance races. And it's great to see some of that history rekindled here in recent years. And hopefully this is not the end of Bentley's motorsports activities.
Hopefully not. Another car that has that low rumble that every time it drives by is the Mercedes-AMG GT3. Here's Chris Locke in the GT3 Evo generation version of the Mercedes-AMG, and again, just a lot of software updates as well as visual changes to the front and rear fascias of these cars. It looks a lot like the ones that you'll see for CrowdStrike Racing and DXCT Racing at the racetracks in the coming months as they get back to the racetrack. Great looking cars and have quite the pedigree in GT3 competition, Ryan. The Mercedes has always been a tried and true platform ever since it was originally launched, and continues to find success in GT World Challenge America and GT America.
I think it's easy to forget that Mercedes had a lengthy absence from motorsports following the Le Mans disaster of 1955, and if you don't know about that, then there's plenty to be found about it on the internet, I'm sure. But after making its return with sports cars and then back into Formula One, and certainly with this GT3 offering and some of its predecessors, the SLS, even before you get to the Mercedes-AMG GT3, and now the Evo version of that car, it's been a remarkably successful platform. They've done a great job supporting young driving talent as well, talking about guys like Mauro Engel and others, Lucas Stoltz, Raffaele Marciello, who might have slipped through the cracks of open-wheel racing that probably had the talent to be solid, if not world-class Formula One drivers, but for whatever reason never got that chance. They find a chance to show what they can do in GT cars as part of the Mercedes factory lineup, and this car has been very fast, but I think even more notably, the car has been extremely successful in customer hands and with amateur drivers. It's been very, very popular with the amateur drivers. It has the reputation of being perhaps the easiest GT3 car to drive, and it's only gotten better in its Evo variant. Mercedes in recent years has been incredibly strong at Spa as well, with a couple of wins, and definitely will be a car to keep an eye on in the real world as well as in the simulation.
Chris Locke right now running in 7th in that Mercedes, the only one on the grid. Have a look at the left-hand side of the screen. You'll see the tower of timing and scoring. Josh Staffen in the Acura. Then it's Roman Alexinkov in a Ferrari, and Aston Martin driven by Vadim Mola. Then 4th place is Burleson's McLaren. 5th place is Zach Koonen's BMW. That is the older M6 GT3 platform. Then Bill Clark in a Porsche. Mercedes AMG of Chris Locke in 7th. That, I count 7 different manufacturers in the top 7. That kind of exemplifies what is beautiful about GT3 racing, Ryan. The diversity within the class is pretty well represented here in Assetto Corsa Competizione and in the CrowdStrike Cup Virtual Racing League.
Definitely so. When you hear us talking about GT3, if you're new to the sport, basically you can think of GT3 as the name for a set of rules. And what the governing body has done, as Bill goes on a bit of a slide there, is they've created these rules, and they've said to auto manufacturers, if you've got a performance car, bring it to us. We'll find a way to make it work, and we'll use our balance of performance system to create a level playing field for each of these different types of race cars, and we'll go racing. And that's exactly what's happened here. And what that gives you is some of the greatest diversity you'll find in modern motorsport, with front engine, mid-engine, and rear engine cars, naturally aspirated as well as turbocharged. It's really, really cool to see the different approaches that the manufacturers can take to stay true to their road-going variants. These cars, by the way, are all based on road-going cars. They have to start their life as a road-going chassis to be a GT3 race car. So it's a wonderful platform, and it's proven to be incredibly successful, incredibly popular, and true to those words. At the 24 Hours of Spa later on this month, the preeminent GT3 race in the world, 60 cars on the entry list. Just a phenomenal collection of talent and diversity of cars and drivers and teams.
24 Hours of Spa is one of those few international races, Ryan, that I just have on my bucket list. There's a handful of them. The 24 Hours of Le Mans, you could throw the Bathurst 1000 or even the 12 Hours of Bathurst in there as well. But for me, the 24 Hours of Spa is the halo race that I want to go to someday. I can't say I'm not a little bit jealous that you're going at the end of the month. I guess I'll absorb the energies from it from my seat here in Chicago. But such a wonderful race, and it really, for me, driving through the Belgian forests in the rain at night, that has to be the image of what sports car racing is. I just find that so fascinating and so amazing to watch.
It really is a tremendous event, and I'll be honest, I really was ignorant to it until probably 5 or 6 years ago, and over the years I've gotten to know more about it, and getting to go for the first time in 2019 really opened my eyes. The track is great. The atmosphere at the event is as good as any in motorsports, and the racing is so competitive. The fact that you have 60 cars, actually the year I was there were 72 cars. They were all in the same class, all theoretically capable of running with one another. It came down to drivers and teams executing, and it really made for a remarkable atmosphere and a remarkable event. So definitely put it on your bucket list if you're a motorsports fan and you've not been before. And if you have been before, you already know what I'm talking about, and I expect we'll see you there in the near future.
So qualifying is complete, and here is a brief look at the qualifying results. Josh Staffen at the top of the board in the Acura NSX GT3. Roman Alexinkov in second. Vinny Mola third. Ian Burleson and Zach Coonan wrapping up the rest of the top 5, and Bill Clark finishing out the front 3 rows. I noticed a lot of the red number boards towards the top of the order. That would be the SRO and Operation Motorsport team sharing those red number boards. And then, of course, Roman Alexinkov for AWS represented on the front row there, and Burleson for CrowdStrike sitting up there in 4th. So a bit of a mix, but I'm seeing a lot more red towards the top, Ryan, and there are team points on the line, so everyone's got to work together with their teammates to get the best possible result for the championship.
That's what it's all about this year with the addition of the team points. That definitely changes the equation, gives incentive to keep racing, even when something might have gone amiss early in the race, and definitely a strong showing there from the red group, no question about that, with Staffen and Mola right there in the top 3. Alexinkov very strong, and Burleson, who we talked about, put in a good late lap in that session to get up to 4th in that McLaren, had been languishing in about 6th or 7th, and that definitely has that beautiful CrowdStrike livery in contention, in good position to challenge for a podium, if not better.
Well, it certainly looks the part. It's very, very fast. He will roll off from the second row. Again, if you're not familiar with CrowdStrike, CrowdStrike will return this year as the official internet and cloud security provider for SRO's Fanatec GT World Challenge America, powered by AWS. You can learn more about CrowdStrike at crowdstrike.com and crowdstrikeracing.com to learn more specifically about their racing program, which has expanded and has been very successful in recent years. Ryan, they've got cars in TC America, GT America, and Fanatec GT World Challenge America, powered by AWS. Love seeing all those cars on the grid in their CrowdStrike at AWS colors. Good looking field, great people down there in the paddock, and one of those cars will also contend in this year's 24 Hours of Spa. Colin Brown and George Kurtz will be taken to the racetrack as they did in 2020. Did they have a 24 Hours of Spa in 2020? It was just in September, right? Or October? Something like that?
Yep. Let's see. It would have been, I think, October. It was actually on the same day that the Europeans do daylight savings time, and there was some thought to make it a 25-hour race because of where it fell, and basically doing the 2 o'clock a.m. hour again, but ultimately that was scrapped. I thought that would have been a really interesting idea, but it was indeed last year, to answer your question, that George and Colin went over, and they raced with the SPS Automotive team. That's who they are expected to be back with again this year, and I think they should very much be a contender within that Pro-Am class.
Well, very exciting things. Of course, getting to drive overseas at any point is really, really neat. And, of course, the 24 Hours of Spa, not much of a better race to do than that one. As we wait for the green flag to go, this is a 40-minute race, Ryan. We've got 12 cars on the grid. So 40-minute race, big track, 12 cars. Like I said earlier, I'm not sure that qualifying was incredibly important, but I think it was also pretty indicative of who's going to be fast. So if you're in the first 2 or 3 rows, how aggressive are you on the start of this race? Do you feel like you can run people down later, or do you feel like you got to get all the passing done early?
That's a great question. I think the answer probably it will depend on what kind of run you get out of La Source and if you feel like you can pull alongside into Eau Rouge. But you really don't want to take a huge risk into Eau Rouge and up the hill to Radillon, I don't think. I think that's a part of the track that you'd really prefer to get single file in. And so it all comes down to the opening jump at the green flag, what kind of a run you get into the hairpin there. Unless, of course, they give the start here on this part of the straight, which is definitely possible. They do that in some of the track configurations. But I think the greater point remains the same. The opening part of this lap at Spa is not a section of track that you want to take a great deal of risk in. There's a lot of potential poor outcomes and not many good ones when you're incredibly aggressive, especially on cold Pirelli tires. So with that in mind, I think there are plenty of passing zones, and there's probably good merit to the theory that if you sit in line, take your chances a little bit later, feeling fairly confident that they will emerge. That's probably the more prudent play at the start. But then again, racing drivers aren't necessarily known for being patient, now are they?
No, that would make it too easy and too predictable. You got to throw some chaos in the mix, Ryan. You know that. Everyone wins in corner number one. That's how it always goes. I think
that's what I learned.
Yeah. I think really your first good passing opportunity will come at Lake Home at the end of the Kemmel Straight, and you're going to essentially try to get a run up to the Lake Home chicane over there. But where you get that green flag is going to be crucial, and how aggressive you are on the run up the hill and how good you get through the gears, that's also going to be pretty critical. Having a quick look back at the points, if you're curious, you can head to the sim grid and find out how the championship standings are looking for yourself. But Josh Staffen has won both rounds at Misano and Zandvoort so far. Roman Alexinkov has a third and a second. Vadim Mola fourth and fifth. Chris Locke fifth and a fourth. But Bill Clark had a podium at Zandvoort, and Ian Burleson had a second at Misano and 11th at Zandvoort. Remember, Ian was one of the drivers that had a lot of bad luck at Zandvoort and is looking for a better round this time. And he's starting in a pretty decent spot. Second row, I think he's in an okay spot to grab a position or two on the opening lap.
I think so too. And again, this McLaren ought to be strong. It's underrepresented, I think, globally, especially for as cool of a car as it is. I think the two of us ooh and ah about it at any chance we get, and it's for good reason. But again, this is another one, only one on the entry list, the provisional entry list for Spa, coming up at the end of the month. We're run by the formidable Jota team, though, so it's going to be one to keep an eye on. And perhaps he gets that run up the hill and has a chance to make a move right here. This is that first great passing zone you talked about into the right-left that's known as Lake Home.
There is that corner, a nice right-left chicane, lots of curbing to use around here. There is also the ever-present discussion of track limits, and while this isn't quite as difficult to talk about as it was back at Misano, where there was a lot of areas where you could run wide, here at Spa there are opportunities to run wide, and you can once or twice, and then you get yourself penalized. So keep yourself within the red and yellow curbing and the white lines. That's the track limits. Anything over that, you can get yourself in trouble. And this is a corner that gets people in a lot of trouble a lot of the time. And just so easy. It's just so much easier just to unwind that wheel and get another 2 or 3 inches every single lap. But you'll get dinged if you try that too much.
Yeah, that's the corner I talked about earlier, known previously as Speaker's Corner, or now Jackie Ick's corner. This is another one right here at Pouhon, also known as the double left, or double gauche in French. You can definitely run wide there, and the thing about this sequence of corners right here is there really is a speed incentive sometimes to do exactly what you say and open that wheel a little bit and open up the speed, carrying that wider arc around the corner, and so that's where we're going to have to keep an eye on drivers running afoul, because it's one thing to go over the track limits if you don't gain any kind of advantage, but there are certainly corners here at Spa, especially with some of the additional safety features that have been put in recent years with extra runoff and things of that nature that allow you potentially to go faster by exceeding those limits. That's where we're really going to need to keep an eye on that, and the stewards certainly will as well.
So with just about a third of the lap left, warming up tires, crucial and critical. Brakes, maybe not so much around here. one of the things about Spa, Ryan, is the high average speed. You don't really slow down for all that much and for all that long. Really, the final chicane and La Source are really the only two very slow corners. Everything else is at least third gear and 100+ miles an hour. So take a deep breath, because this is the last time you're going to see drivers doing under about 60 for the next 40 minutes.
Amazingly enough, this modern version of Spa is considerably slower than the original. The track record at the original was set at over 230 kilometers per hour, which is absolutely massive if you think about it. Basically, La Source was the only slow corner on that track, and for obvious reasons, as cars got faster, safety measures came into play, changes had to be made, and quite frankly, I think they did a nice job of incorporating the history of the track while still maintaining some safety standards, and it's a pretty good compromise that we've come up with. But plenty of challenge, no question about it, and we're about to turn them loose.
40-minute race for the pro drivers. These are the drivers that wanted a little bit more serious racing, a bit more of a high competition level. We've got the AM race, a 25-minute sprint right after this. That's for drivers who want a little bit more of a casual experience. Both races you can catch right now. Thanks for joining us. Again, I'm Kyle Heyer alongside Ryan Marine, and we're going to head all the way down through La Source and get the green flag coming into Eau Rouge. Now that's going to kill a little bit of the momentum that you would normally get, Ryan, from the drive down through Eau Rouge and up through Radillon, but you're still going to be carrying a lot of speed into Lake Home.
Yeah, I think that actually might open up some more passing opportunities, keeping everybody bunched up, keeping that acceleration zone relatively short. Everyone should be nice and bunched together, able to use that slipstream into effect if they get a good, clean run up the hill through Radillon.
Time to go racing for the CrowdStrike Cup Virtual Racing League from Spa. This is round number 3 of the 2021 season. Josh Staffen on pole, waiting for the green flag to fly. Green flag flies, we're racing at Spa. Staffen pulls away, Roman Alexinkov tucks in line behind him. Vadim Mola defending from Zach Coonan in the number 300. That's the orange BMW in trail up over the crest, over the hill in Radillon. And now the run down to Lake Home. Keeping an eye on the 25 car, Rupa Hera, keeping a look on Chris Locke in the number 6, and Bill Clark in the Pink Pig Porsche just up the road.
Looks like a couple of cars going defensive there on the entrance to Lake Home. Staffen, I think, was one of them who might have had a slight bobble coming up the hill there, and that let Alexinkov get closer, but he's able to hold him off for now. Mola still holding third. Coonan slots in fourth, and there's the McLaren Burleson running in fifth.
So drops a spot to the number 300. Coonan just got such a great start. He had that position by the time they got to Eau Rouge. Now they're going to follow in line and get single filed out. Now it just becomes a chess match at this point, with Zach Coonan chasing Vadim Mola over to driver's left before Pujol. It looks like Alexinkov's actually holding up the train just a little bit, but if what we saw at the previous 2 rounds still hangs true, Alexinkov gets a slow start but gets faster as the race goes on.
Yeah, that's been a trend so far this season. Right now, though, it's Burleson looking aggressive here into campus, trying to find his way around Coonan, who had that great start in that orange BMW. BMW, by the way, the most successful manufacturer in the history of the 24 Hours of Spa, with 24 wins over the years. The next closest is Porsche with 8. It's been all BMW for much of the history of the event, and we had a problem here for Bahera, off track just a bit in his Ferrari.
Well, very easy to do that, just misstep, especially when tires and brakes are a little bit cool. Staffen through the higher speed corners on the backside of the racetrack, now into the chicane to finish out the first lap. Whoa, looks like Mola over just way late braked and missed the corner entirely. It's going to bring Coonan and Burleson into the mix here, Ryan. 3-way battle for third.
Yeah, I think Burleson actually is the one who's going to come out the winner here, because that balked the run for Coonan just a little bit. Look at this, side by side, a little bit of door-to-door contact there as Mola goes defensive, and here comes Coonan back to the inside of Burleson, side by side here down the pit straight.
And Burleson just needs to have drivers stop leaning on him. This was the trouble at Zandvoort about a month ago. Climbing up the hill now through Radillon, gets a great run, gets free of the 300 car, and has a spectacular drive up through the top of Radillon and a run onto Mola, but I'm not sure that he's going to be close enough to do anything with it. In the background, you see Chris Locke in the number 6 Mercedes overtaking the 300 car, Zach Coonan, but he's on the wrong side of the racetrack. If he can stay on the left, though, Ryan, he should be able to squeeze through, but I'm not sure he'll be able to hang out there.
Looks like Coonen's going to be able to hold him off for now. This is going to bring Robbie Montanola into this battle, just a little bit behind in that Ferrari we're riding on board with right now. But that all got started because we saw Burleson going side by side with Coonan through the first couple of corners there, and ultimately Coonan had to relent. That cost him a ton of momentum, and that has brought a number of different drivers now back into this mix. Up front, Staffen has a commanding lead of up over a second here in the early going, but this is a great scrap here in the mid-pack.
Bill Clark has the pressure behind from the number 968, running one of the Audi R8 platforms. This is a car that we see kind of in and out. It's not a very popular choice, probably because, you know, when you look at a field of supercars, the Audi R8 is very subtle in that sense, at least visually, but it doesn't mean the performance is any less good. It's actually very similar in the undercarriage as the Lamborghini Huracan GT3, so shares a lot of parts and pieces, and for the majority of the design, other than the visuals. But Mark, the 968, doing very, very well right now and trying to catch that Porsche, the rear engine car.
4 wins in the 24 hours of Spa for the Audi R8 LMS GT3, but none since 2017. The Evo variation of the R8 hasn't been quite as successful as its forebearer, but nevertheless, it's been a remarkably successful platform in GT racing around the world. A little bit of problems there for Locke, and that's going to bring Dizon into the mix here, side by side, exiting the bus stop, and the favored line into La Source goes to the Audi.
Just up the road, as you see these guys run side by side into La Source. Montanola had a great run on Chris Locke in the number 6, wasn't able to complete that pass. Had Zach Coonan kind of holding up the train there just a little bit. Staffen and Alexinkov are 2 seconds clear of Vadim Mola, or make that 3 seconds clear rather. Then it's Burleson, kind of on his own. Then Coonan, Locke, and Montanola. That's the battle you're watching now on the run down to Lake Como.
Probably got a great run through Radion that time. He's in the slipstream here, but Locke also has the benefit of a slipstream up the road just a bit. Robbie pokes the nose out to the inside just ever so slightly, trying to find a way by. Can't do that through Lake Como for now and fall back in line. There's possibly a chance to get late on the brakes here into Rivage or Bruxelles. This corner has a couple of different names, but not close enough to do it this time by. It's hard to see from this shot, but this corner really drops away from you. It's a big downhill as you round that corner, then through speakers right here. And I think this next corner at Pujon is the most difficult on the circuit. A double left-hander, double apex, got to be so patient getting back to throttle in order to not run afoul of track limits there on the exit. But you can't wait too long or you lose all your momentum. Probably pretty strong through there, but losing a little bit of ground to Locke.
Seems like Spa is such a tricky racetrack because they give you these big wide apex curbs and a lot of AstroTurf and concrete and right, you see right here places that you could use, but I've found that it's not incredibly successful to just hammer the curbs everywhere. Montanola runs a little bit wide, but it seems like the track's almost inviting you to turn in early, Ryan, especially into Pujon. There's curbing there on the inside that you don't necessarily want to climb up onto. It's not like tracks like Sonoma where you have to use the curbing to rotate the car. It will upset it, especially in 4th or 5th gear when you're relying more on aerodynamic downforce. As soon as you unstick the car from the ground and jack the thing up in the air, you lose a lot of that diffuser and splitter downforce that helps the car through the high-speed corners. So it's not necessarily ideal to be curb hopping all the time, as much as fun as it would be.
Yeah, I think you're right, and also the other aspect to it is that this is a pretty high-speed circuit, a lot of straightaways where you don't want to carry so much downforce that it's going to be like a parachute out the back of that car. So the car tends to be on edge in some of those high-speed corners because you have to compromise. You're not running as much downforce as you would ideally. This section here, coming up the hill, is where in place you'll feel it as Gefeller goes for a spin out of the bus stop there. But additionally, you feel it a couple other places. Blanchimont comes to mind, Pujon as well, where that car probably doesn't have the same kind of rear downforce that you would ideally have in a corner of that nature, simply because there's so many straightaways you can't afford to pack the downforce on and suffer in a straight line because of it.
I've always found this racetrack to be very challenging to set up a race car for. And we're talking about downforce, and you want to, have the car as slippery as possible for the long straights. It's sort of a catch-22 though, because a lot of the corners at this racetrack are very, very fast and high speed, and you kind of want downforce, but you can't usually get it because you're going to end up sacrificing so much speed on the straight. So it's a delicate balance of how you set up these cars aerodynamically, and typically you're compromising significantly, more so than a lot of other racetracks. So it's pretty obvious when you can watch drivers go down the straightaway to see how many drivers have a high downforce set versus a low downforce set and where they're optimizing the car's performance. So it's usually a very interesting scenario to kind of sit on a straightaway and watch the gaps increase or decrease depending on who's done what.
I think you said the word compromise. That's what it is. And that's true of any racetrack and any race setup. Ultimately, you can't have the car perfect in every corner, and you've got to pick and choose what part of the track to prioritize. But Spa makes that exceptionally difficult because of the combination of high-speed corners like this next one we're about to go through here. Let's stay on board on this ride through Blanchimont. This is sketchy stuff if you don't have the car dialed in just right, or the tires are starting to go off, which is modeled, by the way, within Assetto Corsa Competizione. And that's one of those corners where you'd love to pack on some rear downforce, but you can't do it without compromising your lap time elsewhere. It is just such a difficult proposition to try and figure out what the appropriate balance really is.
Battles continue behind Zach Coonan in 5th place. Ian Burleson hasn't been able to get very far even after getting back by the 300 car, so he remains in 4th. Just briefly checking up the road, Josh Staffen is enjoying a nice Wednesday evening drive through the forests of Belgium. Not a lot of pressure from behind, but keep an eye on Alex Sienkov, because even though he wasn't significantly quicker, only 9 thousandths of a second quicker, he was quicker than Josh Staffen the last time around. And if he can get within slipstream distance, Ryan, he might have a chance to reel Staffen back in at least a little bit closer.
Well, Staffen's definitely not pulling away, and this is something Alex Sienkov has done previously this season as well. Maybe dropping back a little bit at the start, but starting to run stronger laps relative to Staffen as the run goes along. And maybe that's some setup choices that Roman has employed that are easier on tires. Perhaps that's the Ferrari versus the Acura. There are a couple of different things it could be that have led to that trend, but Staffen's a cool customer. He's got a lot of experience. He's not going to get rattled just because the lead isn't expanding or even is shrinking slightly. But Alex Sienkov, we've seen, can be quite aggressive, and so if he can get close, you better believe we'll have a good battle on our hands.
Let's not count out Vadim Mola either. You saw him lurking the background in the Aston Martin Vantage GT3, another very stealthy looking car. Maybe a little bit less stealthy with the lime green and purple on the side, but good looking car regardless. 3.6 seconds back from Alex Sienkov, but running times that are comparable, at least more so than the rest of the field. The front three are the only drivers in the sub 2 minute 19 second bracket, so they're kind of in a league of their own zip code per se. As we are about 8 minutes away from the halfway point of this race. Another thing to consider is we talked a little about the tire grip from the Pirellis, and while they're very, very good tires over time, if you beat them up, you can pretty much kill any speed that you have. So you have to take care of your equipment, your tires, and your brakes. Don't be sliding around a whole bunch, and that can actually change your pace pretty significantly over the course of this 40 minutes.
Yeah, that's right. And I think the thing that's worth noting, if you're new to this, is yes, indeed, this simulation does a great job of modeling tire wear over the course of a long run. And certainly a 40-minute race, it's not as long as some of the endurance GT races that we'll see, and sometimes you'll see drivers and teams opting to double stint tires, less so in recent years, but that is something that's out there. Nevertheless, all this to say, the developers, Kunos, and everybody behind Assetto Corsa Competizione have gone to great lengths to try and model this Pirelli tire that is used in the real world, and they've done a great job of that. So yes, you have to take care of those tires. You can't abuse them. You can't just ride up over the curbs using some of the sharp edges of curbs. That can be dangerous as well. And there is definitely a black art to taking care of those tires, making sure that you've got something under you to attack with in the final 10 minutes of the race. Don't think Robbie Montanola is waiting for the final 10 minutes, though. He was looking awfully aggressive going back a couple of corners here and certainly staying right within striking distance.
definitely on the attack. You could see how neutral the steering was through speakers. You turn the car in, and then you could hear the rear end sliding around, and that's what I was more concerned about, Ryan, was tire wear. You know, it is possible to destroy tires in a 40-minute race. Yes, I'm more concerned about tire temperature and getting them overheated by doing just what we saw Robbie Montanola just doing, sliding the tires around. Basically, it's just a temporary issue. If you slide add too much friction into the mix and slide the tires around too much, they get hot and they get greasy above a certain temperature. And you can cool them back down, but it requires typically to relieve your pace for a couple laps. But Robbie on the attack at the moment, and staying solidly in 7th, but putting pressure on 6th place Chris Locke. I'm not convinced that this 5th, 6th, 7th battle is done sorting itself out yet, though. And with 26 minutes to go, there's still plenty of time. And the other thing, Ryan, is don't rush your pass. 26 minutes to go, no reason why it has to get done by minute 25. They only give you the points in the checkers at minute 0.
Oh, that was wild right there. Montanola a little bit too late on the brakes going into the chicane at the end of the lap, and did a great job just to go straight on and make sure he didn't get into the back of Locke just up the road. That could have been disastrous. Look at that. That was close as well, but he's able to reel it back in, and quite frankly didn't lose too much time in the process. However, that's the kind of thing that could see a rather ignominious end to the race, not just for the driver that makes the slight error there, but also for the innocent victim. That's what Locke would have been. But you know what, Kyle? It is amazing. We talk about this as an error, but it's maybe going to the brakes, what, a half a second too late, 20 feet too late, something along those lines. If that can make all the difference. That goes to show what the margins are. They're not very big at all. I find braking in GT3 cars a fascinating discussion point. You talk to certain drivers, big moment there for Montanola through Lake Home, but talking to different drivers about their driving styles, you know, these cars have anti-lock braking systems, and they're quite advanced. They're different algorithms than the ones you'd find in a road car, and some drivers will find the most pace in their car by essentially taking their foot and basically hammering it into the floorboard and letting the ABS figure it out and do all the work. Other drivers will find that there's more nuance to it than that, Ryan. They're going to basically find where the ABS starts to engage and hold it there, traditional threshold braking, just with a bit of a safety net on top. But sometimes to find that limit, you got to step up to it, and I think that's what Montanola did, and I think he learned something there. He found out that braking point was 20 feet too late, so he can back it up a little bit and try that again. Yeah, that's right. And going to your point, there are different techniques for sure. I think the conventional wisdom is, yes, you could just mash the pedal to the floor and use the ABS to slow the car down, but that's probably not quite as efficient as if you don't quite engage the ABS, or certainly don't engage it quite to that extreme. But yeah, we've seen a lot of different techniques, and the thing is, that is totally adjustable to where the ABS kicks in and to what extent it kicks in. That's true in the real world. It's true in Assetto Corsa Competizione as well, and that's one of those things that it's not just a tool for a driver, but it's also something that they have to learn to master, so that when the situation arises and they need to dial in the perfect setting to be able to go on the attack when it's winning time late in a race, that they know exactly what they need to do. And I think in many respects the driver aids, as much as they do help drivers, they also further complicate the job of the modern race car driver. And that the ABS and traction control as well are black arts, I think, in a lot of respects, trying to figure out what exactly the best setting for any individual situation might be.
I've just got to imagine the engineers that work on the ABS systems, and the programmers and the people that go into building the hardware, and the thousands of lines of code that must be written to make all this stuff work. And then in the car, you just get a handy little knob, 1 through 6 or whatever it is. I mean, to be able to simplify it down enough to where the driver can pick a specific setting and have it work as beautifully as it does is nothing short of an engineering marvel. Another marvel I've been keeping my eye on is watching Alex Steenkopp's pace increase. He's reeled in Josh Staffen just a little bit. Sub 1 second is the gap now as they head into Pujon. So this is what we've seen the last couple rounds, is Alex Steenkopp get progressively quicker. The question is he going to hit a wall? Not a physical one, but a wall with his pace. And can he reel in Staffen enough to actually have a legitimate shot of passing him?
Well, we'll find out here soon enough. He's definitely been making some inroads, and it's hard to say specifically where that's happening, but we've seen this lead cut in half over the course of the last couple of laps. It was up near 2 seconds the last time we checked in on it, and it's down significantly, although it does look like Staffen was able to build up a little bit more of a margin here in recent moments at least, but Aleksenkov is not going anywhere, and Staffen finds himself in a pretty familiar position where he's running with the lead, but he's got a very fast Ferrari right behind with a driver that can be quite aggressive. So that is not the easiest situation to try and handle behind the wheel when all of those things are true, and it's becoming more and more apparent that Aleksenkov is going to play a factor here before it's all said and done.
Across the line, 1.47 is the gap. It's fluctuating around 0.6 of a second. Back to the Kunin and Locke battle. This started on the opening laps and has yet to extinguish. I think it's a little bit more steady than maybe we initially had predicted, but any moment, even the slightest mistake could bring anybody back into the mix. I noticed that Burleson has dropped slightly in pace, and Kunin is beginning to reel him back in. So throw the CrowdStrike number 720 back into the mix for fourth.
Yeah, can't count that car out just yet for sure. I mean, plenty of drivers capable, and I think you brought up a great point. It just takes one slight mishap and the complexion of the race changes. Keep in mind, we're not even halfway yet. We're just closing in on 20 minutes to go in this 40-minute race, and I think while it is a relatively short race, there still is the chance of seeing some comers and goers, those that keep a hold of their tires a little bit better. And I think Kunin is one to keep an eye on in that BMW. It seems to be lurking a little bit. He got caught out in some traffic earlier in this race that caught him on the back foot, but subsequent to that, it seems like he's been pretty aggressive, making his way back forward, getting past Locke again, and tracking down Burleson. These two had a nice duel earlier. We've seen Kunin in races in the past, very, very fast driver behind the wheels. So I think that this might be a driver to keep an eye on yet to even potentially challenge for a podium, although he's got some work to do to first get past Burleson and then perhaps track down Mola a little bit later on.
Keep an eye on the fourth place battle. If you've got any questions for Ryan or myself, probably more for Ryan, feel free to put them in the YouTube chat. If you're watching this live, we'll do our best to answer in the next 20 minutes before the pro race ends and the AM race begins. Of course, we both got busy motorsport schedules this season, and thankfully both of them include more World Challenge events. So very excited to get back to the racetrack and see Ryan again. I haven't seen you in a couple months, so good to see you again. Road America, I'm very excited for. That's one of our upcoming events towards the tail end of August. One of my favorite places on planet Earth. It feels like it feels like an environment like Spa, where it's a track built into the nature, not on top of it. And I really enjoy my time at Road America every time I go.
It's a magical place, there's no doubt. As Locke starts to go on the attack here, Kunin, I just was singing his praises, and he's going to be on the defensive here into the source if he's not careful. There you go, moving to the inside there just to protect that inside line. And I think that should be good enough to hold that Mercedes off for the moment. And I think you're right, the comparison you often do here, Road America, compared to Spa. And when I went to Spa for the first time, that was what I was expecting. I must say, Spa was something a little bit extra special, in my experience at least, but that's not to diminish Road America. I do believe it is the finest road course in North America. The food is great, the track is spectacular, it's revered by the drivers, plenty of interesting things to do nearby, so can't wait for that too. But you know what, you really can't shake a stick at any of the spots, any of the stops on the SRO American calendar. It basically hits all the major road racing venues on the continent, and that's one of the appeals of the series, no question about it.
I have to really point out that the detail here in Assetto Corsa Competizione is pretty amazing. I'm not sure how easy this is to see. I think it's behind the Fanatec GT World Challenge America logo, but on my end, I can read the Lumarank branding on the back of the number board that goes on the windshield of the car. You see the lit up digital number and driver board there on the windshield. They have the branding for that on the back of the inside of the windshield. That is attention to detail. No one would notice if you didn't have that there. But who knows, that Assetto Corsa Competizione really going over the top with that. That's pretty cool.
Well, the people from Lumarank might have noticed that it wasn't there. But I think you're right. It is remarkable, the level of attention to detail. There are other simulators you can use to run GT3 cars, but I think if you're looking for the ultimate GT3 experience, this is it. and possibly the best part of it. As great as the visuals are, as great as the physics are, and the attention to detail, I think the soundtrack is the best. The capture of the engine noises, and that's what makes sports car racing awesome. It's not 20 of the same engines running around. It's 5 or 6 distinctly different notes, and I think that's perfectly captured in this game.
I feel the exact same way. There is no other sim or game that I've ever experienced the level of immersion from a soundscape perspective as Assetto Corsa Competizione. It really does capture reverberation off of the landscape and the echoes and all that, and just the tones and notes of the engines. Amazing. On top of the diversity in the engine note, as you mentioned previously. How about Bill Clark and the number 92, the Porsche 911 GT3R, the rear engine, the lone rear engine car here in the race right now, chasing Robbie Montanola, who's fallen off pace just a little bit. But again, we've talked about the 911 GT3R in the past, but I really admire how different it is and how successful it's been with such a contrarian platform to everybody else.
Yeah, and it's won the last 2 24 hours of Spa, actually, 2019 and 2020. It has a rich history. I mentioned BMW, the winningest manufacturer in the history of that race, which goes back to 1924, by the way, although there were several years missed for various reasons. And it's worth noting as well that a lot of the race in its history, it was a touring car race, not a GT race. So that's part of the reason you see BMW in such a dominant position, because Ferrari and Porsche and others that didn't build cars to touring car regulations really weren't eligible to have the kind of success that BMW did. But Porsche has had a great run in recent years. Really, since the GT era came online, it's been one of the cars to beat, and a couple of wins in the last decade, 2010, 2019, 2020, if you count those 11 years. 3 wins there, a further win in 2003, another win in 1993, and then 3 wins in the 60s. And it's a platform that, yeah, like you say, it's contrarian. You don't see a lot of rear-engine cars these days. The mid-engine seems to be the way to go, but there is something timeless about the 911. You look at a 911 from 1967 and one from 1997, and you can see the heritage there, and I think that's one of the reasons it has so many fans worldwide. That, coupled with all the racing success, it's pretty hard to beat a 911, I must say, on the racetrack and also tugging on the heartstrings too.
It's a rarity in the automotive world to have a vehicle, basically transcend all these different generations. And while it has, assimilated to what modern cars look like, it has carried over a lot of the traits from the original car. The original cars built, back in the 60s and 80s, and basically the entire lineage is traceable from one version to the next. There's not a lot of cars, there's cars that can do that for a generation or 3, but not for several decades at a time. A Ferrari now might share some basic design principles, but they're very different looking than they used to. Where I think Porsches are ones that carry that lineage, and you could maybe argue that the BMW kidney grille has lasted about as long, just slightly changed. But it is a rarity in the automotive world to have a car design, at least proportionally, go for as long as it has.
I think that's true, and again, part of the reason why the platform has proven to be so popular, and even that BMW grille you talked about sort of goes out the window next year when the new M4-based GT3 car from BMW replaces the venerable M6 that you're looking at here in the hands of Koonin holding off Locke at the moment. That M6 has been remarkably successful, won the 24 Hours of Spa in 2018, 2016, I think would have been the M6, but that might have been the Z4. I'm a little unclear on that one. I have to go back in my notes and look. But if you've seen the new M4 GT3, that giant grille definitely is a departure from what we've come to anticipate from BMW. I'm not sure it's been universally praised. It might be growing on me a little bit, though. What do you think, Kyle?
Yeah, I think in race car form it looks great, and I think any car that's a successful one is a great-looking race car. But I think as a road car, I'm still not there yet. But maybe time will tell. It's following the trend. I was just actually texting one of my friends that got me into racing a little while ago, and we were joking there's a meme that's going around of the BMW grills getting bigger and bigger because he sent me the new Tundra that has this massive front end opening that, you know, everyone's joking that they're just going to be in just a grill with wheels on it by 2025. But, you know, going on that route, let's talk about Toyota just a little bit, because in GT4 America this year, we've got some new additions to the paddock, and that being the GR Supra. There's a handful of them, I believe, in World Challenge competition. Those cars have been very good looking. Again, pretty interesting combination of BMW and Toyota design. But so far, they look like they've been doing okay, Ryan, and they're great looking race cars as well.
I was wondering if that's where you were going with this. Yeah, if you're wondering what the segue is between BMW and a Toyota Supra, indeed, the power plant in the new Supra is BMW derived. And I'll be honest, I'm a little unclear as to exactly how that came to be, but it seems to be working. And you're right, we have seen a couple. Forbush Performance has run a couple of cars in GT4 America. We've also seen the Smooge Racing car, which has been very successful in the GT4 America AM class, with former NASCAR Cup Series Rookie of the Year, Kevin Conway, and quite possibly the revelation of the season, John Jesre, the youngster who only has 1 year of racing experience in anything, and that was MX5 Cup last year. But that's it, no karting, nothing before that. They have been a really good tandem, not just in the AM class, but with some good overall results too.
Big slide for Kunin through Pujon. That's going to open up the door for Chris Lock, and down the inside he will go and take 5th position away from the number 300. So the orange BMW beginning to fade slightly, but an aggressive dive to try to grab it back will not be successful. Just about 10 minutes of racing left to go. And you'll note that we haven't shown you the lead battle in a while. That's because it had expanded a little bit up to almost 2 seconds. Now it's back down to 1.2, and just like we've seen in the past, Alexeinkov gains and then loses and then gains again, but it's just never consistent enough to legitimately challenge for the race lead, but there's still time left.
Very true, still 10 minutes left. This is, I think, the time, though, we're going to see if Alexeinkov has anything for Kunin. If he's been holding anything back, trying to preserve the equipment, now's the time to put that to use. Just 10 minutes left. A long lap around Spa. This is the longest track, by the way, on the F1 calendar. Even in its shorter configuration that it is today, it's still a very lengthy lap. Over 4 miles, takes over 2 minutes, nearly 2 or over 2.25 minutes actually, to run around in a GT3 car. So not many chances left, and I think he's going to put it all on the line now if there's anything left to give.
So 1.3 seconds is the gap on the Kemmel Straight. Moving back to the 5th place battle, Chris Lock and Kunin. Just watching this because as we head onto the Kemmel Straight, that's where the slipstream is going to become very important. Oh, big moment for both Lock and Kunin. Going to build this huge run and take this breath of wind to driver's left and sweep out for a pass down here into Lake Home, Ryan. That was a great battle, and they're still side by side.
Yeah, here's the braking zone. Let's see if Lock can hold off Kunin. The answer appears to be no. Kunin able to slip through. Definitely not the ideal line through Lake Home, but was able to hang in there on the defensive. Nice run there, and now into Rivage. Let's see if he can hold off Lock. I think the answer is going to be yes. Not a lot of great passing opportunities here for the next couple of corners, so I think we can give that position here to Kunin. Nice recovery there. Get back up into the 5th spot and continue his strong run here this season.
Into Pujon again, where the position swapped last lap around. No mistake that time. So he will stay in 5th after losing a little while. I'm just watching Bill Clark in the mirrors of both these drivers, though. He got by. Well, Montanola has hit pit lane, by the way, so he's dropped out of the contention for the lead, or for the 7th, I should say. But Bill Clark is reeling in. 5th place battle with Kunin and Lock, and it's going to start putting pressure on Lock to get this pass done and hang on to it because he's coming and coming quick. 8 minutes to go. Still time left, 3 or 4 laps, but that's enough.
Yeah, definitely plenty of time to get this done. Let's see, nice run there. And if he can get a nice run through Blanchimont, there should be a chance to make that pass into the chicane at the end of the lap. Let's see, I think he's close enough. Let's see if Kunin goes defensive. It looks like he will, trying to make the Mercedes go the long way around. I think you're better off here if you're Locked, just tucking back in line, maximizing your exit off of this chicane, trying to get the good run out of this corner and perhaps get the pass done in the braking zone for the source, but I don't think he's going to be close enough for that either, Kyle.
Yeah, it's going to get very, very close here in the final 7 minutes. Lock right to the rear bumper of Kunin through La Source. And now into the slipstream area here. As soon as we crest Radillon, that long straightaway, the Kemmel Straight, will give you that opportunity to use the driver in front like a battering ram, like a snowplow for air, for lack of a better way to explain that. They're just going to shove all the air out of the way, create that low pressure zone, and let Locke pull in. But we've talked about the strengths and weaknesses of the Mercedes in the past, but you would think by looking at it and by listening to it that it would be a very strong car on the straightaway, and it's not weak in the straightaways by any sense, but its strengths is really in the tight and technical portions, which is sort of contradicting what you would normally think about this car. So it's not necessarily going to pull an M6 or a Ferrari on a straightaway, but it could outhandle them in the corners the way that they've set this thing up. So I'm not expecting Locke to draft by Kunin like he's standing still, even with this big thundering V8 under the hood.
Yeah, the BMW typically is known for its straight line speed, and we've had some great new statistics in our broadcasts of SRO America this year, the race vision powered by AWS, and oftentimes that highlights the fastest trap speeds. And the BMW seems like race in and race out is the fastest in a straight line. And you're right, I think you look at that Mercedes and you think that's probably where its strength would lie, that it would be a rocket ship in a straight line, but partially due to the balance of performance, that's really not the way that it's played out. I think that car unrestricted would be very fast in a straight line, but they don't run unrestricted. They have to try and balance these very disparate platforms, and the Mercedes, to its credit, has been able to find its pace elsewhere over the course of a lap.
Got a note from Robbie Montanola that his race met its end in Eau Rouge, which is not an uncommon way to have your race end here at Spa. There's only really a handful of places that you'll find yourself crashed, and Eau Rouge is one of the popular spots. And by popular, I don't mean well liked. I mean it's where all the drivers hate to end their weekends. But unfortunately, Montanola is out. Blanchemont's another spot that'll get you quite a bit, just high speed, and then of course La Source on turn one, lap one scenarios quite a bit. But under 5 minutes to go here, Ryan, are down to the last couple laps. And the lead is still about 1.4, 1.5 seconds. But for fifth place, this is going to be an amazing battle. Kunin, Locke, and now, look, Bill Clark only about 10 car lengths back.
Yeah, definitely on the charge. No question about that. This has been a fun battle to keep an eye on here over the last couple of laps. And don't think that's going anywhere anytime soon.
No, it is not. They've been doing this for about 35 minutes. I'm not exactly sure that we're going to see a resolution to this conflict anytime soon. Clark right behind, 8/10 back. Ruth Behera, remember his spin on the opening lap? He has recovered up to 9th. Austin Murphy, I don't think we mentioned Austin. He's been around once or twice running for the CrowdStrike team. And CrowdStrike, speaking of, not an amazing turnout for the CrowdStrike team in the pro race, as commentator Curtis Murphy's going to go around and get the Armco. But you see, again, the white number boards are the CrowdStrike drivers, and the highest of them is Burleson. 2 of the SRO and Atmo cars, actually make that 3, are in the top 5 with only 1 AWS showing. So SRO and Atmo going to maximize their points, or at least get close to that, with 1st, 3rd, and 5th right now.
Yep, definitely. Great to see the team aspect of this. We'll see that carrying over into the AM race a little bit later on as well. And quickly going back to what you discussed about Eau Rouge being a popular place to crash. One of the great stories I uncovered while prepping for the 24 Hours of Spa was back in 1999, apparently, during the Belgian Grand Prix. Jacques Villeneuve was driving for the BAR Honda team and crashed going through Eau Rouge in practice. And the very next time around, after they cleared up his crash car, his teammate Ricardo Zonta also crashed in Eau Rouge in a very similar manner. Evidently, he had been told by his team boss that Jacques was very good in that corner and he should do whatever Jacques did, which he took to the extreme. Also, apparently, they had a little wager going behind the scenes that whoever could take it flat first would win. So just some of the things that have happened in that famous corner over the years.
Man, I love stories like that. That's one of the that's pretty awesome. But yeah, do what he did. Just don't crash when he crashed. That's
Right.
not exactly the way you want to do that. 2 minutes and 27 seconds. Go ahead.
Next time you got to specify that.
Yes.
Yeah, do what he did unless he sticks it in the fence.
Yes. I guess that's why, I mean, you know, we talk about taking Eau Rouge flat, you know, going back to the comparisons between this and Road America. The analogy there would be the kink at Road America, the corner that everyone tries to take flat. In a GT3 car, it's fairly safely flat, but in my world of grassroots racing, even in your 92 Civic SI, that's a gutsy move to do, even with 195 horsepower. So I remember I was in a Spec Miata in the rain, and yeah, the kink was a braking zone. So it's working up to it for sure. But same thing here at Eau Rouge. I'm sure, doing an HPDE event here at Spa for the first time, that'd be a pretty intimidating corner.
Oh, no doubt about it. The incline, once you clear Eau Rouge, it's like 120 feet that you drop, something like that, through the Eau Rouge section. And then you climb up the hill, and it's like a 18% incline, just a massive jump up that hill. And then once you crest that hill, you're basically at the highest elevation point that you're going to find around the circuit. So it presents a massive challenge. It's almost 3 different corners in one in a lot of respects, and there's a reason it's so revered.
One of the things I love watching in Eau Rouge, specifically with Formula One cars and higher downforce prototypes and the like, at night, driving through there on low tire pressures, the compression that you get through Eau Rouge. Basically, the cars compress into the pavement with all the G-force, all the G-load, and the low tire pressures, and they throw up showers of sparks. And they're just spectacular to watch. Meanwhile, while that's discussions happening for 5th place, Josh Staffen has begun the final lap. And this will be the last time around Spa-Francorchamps here for the pro race for the CrowdStrike Cup Virtual Racing League round number 3. Don't leave after the checkered flag falls. Immediately after this race, we'll head directly into the AM race, which will be basically taking the green flag, or at least on the pace lap when we head over there. So don't go anywhere. And in the meantime, we're going to shift back to 5th place because here comes Bill Clark up to try to grab 6th from Chris Locke.
Here comes that pink pig liveried Porsche right there in the slipstream behind the Mercedes. I think he's going to be right where he wants to be, getting a slipstream not just from that Mercedes, but also Coonan in the BMW. But as I say that, oh, it's so easy for it to go wrong there. The good news is I think he had a nice gap over the 8th place car, so hopefully he can hold on to 7th, but that means now the battle is for 5th and 6th, with Coonan still trying to fend off Locke and using the horsepower of that BMW to his advantage.
1 car less in that battle for 5th, and props to Bill for locking it up and not sticking it in the fence. That was a pretty spectacular save, to say the least. But Chris Locke knows that he's got a half a lap left to get this pass done. He did it last time in Pujon, but was only able to hang on to it for about 3/4 of a lap. I'm sure he'd like to try it again. Getting a later apex, trying to get the power down earlier, spins the rear tires just a touch. But he's building better runs than Coonan at corner exit. Let's see, has one last opportunity. Coonan a little bit off apex, Locke too slow to the gas though. Man, just not quite enough pace to get there.
Nowhere to go with the run, too. It had a little bit of a run out of Pujon, but just not enough of a braking zone here through Fania, or Piff Path, as the Brits like to call this corner. And, yeah, just running out of chances. I think that Mercedes might be a little bit quicker, but there's a difference between being faster and being able to find a way past.
Yeah, he was behind once he got to the S's there. He got the steering a little bit behind as well. Checkered flag for Josh Staffen, and Josh Staffen will win and sweep the first 3 rounds, the first half of the 2021 CrowdStrike Cup Virtual Racing League Pro Series. There's Roman Alexeinkov second. Vadim Mola is going to round out the podium. And as they sit in the standings, that is how they're going to leave the pro race this time around. Ian Burleson, I had high hopes that he was going to end up on the podium, but just one spot short here at Spa. Then Zach Coonan 5th with Chris Locke right behind in 6th. I think he needed a couple more laps and a little bit more brakes to get by Coonan, but P5 and P6 for those 2.
Look how close that was, too, at the line. Really great battle that they put on, and clean as well. That was the takeaway. There was some great racing throughout that 40 minutes, and the fact that we really didn't see any kind of major coming together was quite impressive.
Here's Arup Behera after his spin on the opening lap, recovers for a top 10. He will finish in 9th. Austin Murphy and Matt Geffeller, the last two to finish up their race. Here's Murphy. And Matt Geffeller just behind. Murphy running really slow, but he will still get to the line before Geffeller. 10th and 11th for those two. Here's a look at the race results. Well, we're going to show them to you, but had the UI pop in front of me just for a moment. And we'll bring you the timetables here real quick just to show you where everybody finished. And we're going to head right on over to the AM stream, which will begin in just a moment. But have a look. Staffen, Alexeinkov, Mola, Burleson, and Kunin. Locke, Clark, Dyson, and Behera wrapping up the rest. And again, SRO and Atmo with the red number boards. 1st, 3rd, and 5th. It'll be a good points day for them, Ryan, as we conclude the pro race. Pretty solid racing, but now the next one up is going to be the AM race.
Yes, so looking forward to that. I think we've seen something perhaps to do with the format, just the 20 minutes, not a lot of time to wait. There's no preserving tires in this race. We've seen this have some fireworks over the course of the season so far. The pros, you can see how much effort they put into it. The cars look really solid. The setups look good. The racing has been good there too, but I think there is something to say about these AM races. They've been some of the more entertaining races we've had throughout the course of 2021.
They have been. They've been very entertaining, and we've got a little bit of time left in the qualifying, so we'll get to kind of take a peek at where everyone is on raw pace before we get into the race. So about 7 minutes left here in that session. A couple new names that I don't recall seeing. Well, maybe they were. Trey Miller, I think he ran around with us last time. Let's have a look. He is running a beautiful CrowdStrike livery. Oh, no, he is. Yeah, he's been here. He's 3rd in the standings. He won at Zandvoort. That's why I recognize that name. This is a livery based off of the Formula One pace car, which CrowdStrike is sponsoring this year. And it is a good-looking livery, that's for sure.
Yeah, definitely. And I love seeing that CrowdStrike representation when I flip on a Grand Prix as well. Looking forward to that this coming weekend. Sharp-looking race car, great partnership that has only grown over the years, and expect to see that continue.
Of course, CrowdStrike also with the Mercedes-AMG F1 team with Lewis Hamilton and Valtteri Bottas. And as always, Mercedes having a very successful season, but saw that the CrowdStrike branding is up on the halo this year, which is a highly visible spot. Really cool to see them join that team for the F1 championship again for 2021. But man, something about this all red and white livery really speaks to me. The normal one's great too. The one that they run on the cars here in America for the World Challenge Series looks good, but this speaks to me too. I also really like one small detail that Assetto Corsa Competizione allows that is different from sims like iRacing, is they allow you to paint parts of the car that are typically off limits. In this case, the rear diffuser is all body color, which is typically just carbon fiber. Allow you to paint it here in Assetto Corsa, which is a nice little feature.
It is a nice touch, definitely, and I think it adds to the beauty of this paint scheme. It does look really, really good, and like you say, it seems like no matter what you throw the CrowdStrike livery on and whatever the component colors of that livery might be, it looks sharp. And I don't know a whole lot about branding or logo design or anything like that, but I suspect that is the sign that it's been done very well.
Yes. Ivan Levalv in the number 918 running in 2nd, and despite the car number, this is a Ferrari. I was thinking of the Porsche 918, the hypercar. But this is an easy car to spot from a mile away. Bright orange, like my Scion FRS I've got laying around. Pratik Mishra in the number 7 running in 3rd, another Ferrari. Rodney Campbell in a Porsche running in 4th. And Jackson Rusin in the number 87 running the CrowdStrike liveried Acura NSX. Chris Hazewinkle in another Porsche. He's been with us for a little while. Jay Gleason in the McLaren, and Keith McVeigh in the number 12 running a Ferrari. A lot of Ferraris chosen in this AM race, and I find that interesting. I'm not exactly sure why the preference of the Ferrari, but perhaps something to do with its approachability and the name recognition also. But mid-engine rear-wheel drive cars tend to be fairly predictable up until you step right to the limit, and then they can be a handful at times. But a handful of them, and they're doing pretty well, so they're not slow.
Well, you do your fair share of sim racing, Kyle. What is your go-to GT3 car?
It's funny you asked that because I was going to say the Ferrari.
Me too.
I was going to, I don't know what it is, but at least my sim of choice is typically iRacing for competition. And while I find the Ferrari to be the least inspiring soundscape, I found it to be the easiest car for me to approach and go fast. I think I probably prefer spending time in something like the Mercedes, but I've just found myself more comfortable in the 488 for whatever reason, so that might be part of it.
I'm right there with you. That's been my go-to here. I've been trying to run some of the different ones in various sims here over the years, and I did find something I liked with the 911 here in recent weeks, and had some success playing around a little bit in the Bentley. But the thing with the Bentley that we didn't talk about earlier is that it's right-hand drive, and that perspective really does take a while to get used to. I remember asking Alvaro Parent about that when he transitioned into the Bentley for K-Pax Racing in SRO America a few years ago, and he told me it wasn't a big deal to him.
Well,
just left blown away by the adaptability of a world-class GT driver.
I was going to say, for me, in different simulators where you get to drive right-hand drive cars, it's generally okay, and I don't find it that big of a deal until you get into a lot of the corners where you're braking right on the edge of the racetrack. Think like Road America into turn 1. The track is so narrow, you're doing about 175 miles an hour, and you have to essentially get the car right to the edge of the grass. And as soon as you touch the brakes, any fluctuation an inch either way can ruin your day. And in a right-hand drive car, you end up putting the car off just a little bit too far to the left, and you can find yourself in trouble really, really fast. Now, on the contrary, when you're on the other side of the racetrack, braking for a corner like turn 5 or turn 6 at Road America, you find it a lot easier because you can tell where the edge of the racetrack is, and you can feel it in the wheel as well. So there is definitely some pros and cons, and I think it helps you. It basically flips which corners you're putting the car on the edge of the track closer to, and helps you in the other half. So it's kind of a 50-50 trade, I guess.
I guess so, if you can get comfortable with it. I never could. That always did prove to be a barrier for me. I like my comfortable left-hand drive, but especially around some of the more treacherous courses, like a Bathurst, for instance. Like, I can't imagine jumping into a right-hand drive and running at Bathurst if that's not something that you're used to.
Well, the good thing is at Bathurst, you know where the track limits are because you usually hit them.
You bounce off of them, yeah.
Yeah, no need for stewards to stand there. You just put a concrete wall there; it'll do it all itself. It's usually pretty effective too.
One of the many things that recommends Bathurst.
Oh man, I've always found Bathurst. I've never been able to drive it well in sims. I've tried and I've lapped it, and I just can never get comfortable in anything with any reasonable amount of horsepower. Going up the hill, I find way more challenging than going down. It just seems like I always feel like I'm floating, and I just never feel in the racetrack. And I have such respect for the drivers and teams that can go up there and go down there without any fear in the world of hitting some concrete.
I'm not saying I'm fast, but I do like lapping that place, and probably have more laps there in ACC than anywhere else. That is my go-to when I want to try out a new car. And maybe that's why the Bentley was so challenging, as I'm trying to adapt in the tightest of confines. And if you're new and aren't familiar with what we're talking about, Bathurst is a famous and esteemed track in Australia. It's modeled beautifully in Assetto Corsa Competizione. Go check it out. But in the meantime, check it out on YouTube. There's some amazing footage of GT3 cars racing around there, Aussie supercars as well. Just one of the most incredible racing circuits left on the planet. It is the quintessential, you never would design it this way today. So thank goodness somebody thought to do it 50 plus years ago.
It's right at home in Australia, and I would say, at Australia, you might as well stay home to avoid all the dangers, but then you'll find a snake in your toilet, so you can't really get away from it at the racetrack or at home. But one of the places I'd like to go for sure. Qualifying is complete, or at least the checkered flag is out, so drivers will get to finish their laps. Very close for the pole here. Look at this, Trey Miller and Ivan Lvov by 48 thousandths of a second. Miller still has to finish a lap, so he is claimed pole for now. He might just be able to improve it a little bit. His best lap time is a 2:21.138. Across the line this time. 221, 138. So that was an improvement, actually. And actually, he tied his previous lap. So that was why I was confused for a moment. I was trying to figure it out.
To the thousandth of a second.
Yeah,
That's
down
consistency.
to it. Says last and best, both a 221, 138. But either way, he get it. So Trey Miller leading the AM points, or I think, was that correct? Leading it or second? Third in the AM points. Pratik Mishra is leading. Missed Mazzano, or didn't score points at Mazzano, but did at Zandvoort, finish 7th. Jay Gleason had a 3rd at Mazzano, a 4th at Zandvoort. Trey Miller didn't start at Mazzano, but had a 1st at Zandvoort. Chris Ramirez, a 2nd and 11th to his name. Jason Leach from Operation Motorsport, a 6th and a 5th. So the points fight will be very interesting to watch in this shorter of the two races. I believe this is only a 20-minute or 25-minute. Bit of a sprint in comparison to what we ran earlier in the night. And I like sprint races, Ryan, because they condense all the action into one very exciting moment. 25-minute race in this one. So condenses all the action into 25 amazing minutes. And we're a couple minutes shy of starting our pace lap.
Yeah, ready for that for sure. It should be a ton of fun. That's not a lot of laps around this place. We're talking just over 10, probably 11 laps, maybe 12 at the most, due to the length of it. So plenty of danger, but not that many opportunities, right? So you got to amp up the aggression right away to try and take advantage of any opportunity that should present itself. And while I think the mindset that I tried to lay out about the start for the pro race still applies, maybe a little less so when you have so much less time to work with. There is extra impetus on trying to go aggressive right off the bat.
Well, one note we should mention is that Ivan Lvov, who was scheduled to start on the front row, is actually sitting at the back of the field now in that orange Ferrari 488, so I'm not sure if he had a penalty or a grid spot penalty or something, but he has been shuffled to the back of the grid. That will put Pratik Mishra on the front row, Rodney Campbell, Joe Mattioli in 3rd and 4th, and Dave Lowe, John Willeman in 5th and 6th, Martin Westergaard-Lassen in 7th, and Jackson Rusin in 8th, and Chris Hayeswinkle, Jay Gleason 9th and 10th, Keith McVeigh, Lee Plant, and of course Ivan Lvov rounding out our 13-car grid. Equal field sizes between Pro and Am this week, or just about equal. And again, the white is the CrowdStrike drivers, the gray number backgrounds on the timing and scoring. Those are your AWS competitors. And the red are the SRO and Operation Motorsport drivers. And there is a big field of the CrowdStrike competitors in this one. So they're going to probably have the run of the show here at the front if they can get by Mishra and Campbell.
Definitely. That's a couple of drivers to keep an eye on. And we've seen a lot of unpredictability in these AM races through the course of this season. And again, the difference between the Pro and the AM in addition to a shorter race distance. But this is more for those that want to enjoy sim racing in a slightly less aggressive and intensive environment. So probably less time spent on setups and preparation during the week. But Kyle, what we've seen so far this year is that has not detracted from the entertainment value. These AM races have been as compelling as their pro counterparts, if not more so. They
have been spectacular to watch, and I think one of the things that the AM race brings in is a bit of unpredictability, whereas the pro field, you have a field of 10 or 12 cars running qualifying laps for 40 minutes, and while it's very impressive to watch, it doesn't lend itself necessarily to the chaos and confusion that an AM race can sometimes lead to, and that I find that very entertaining. So it's always a blast to watch these guys go off and race. And I have to say, wow, Joe Mattioli's car, this livery is wonderful. And I think I stand corrected, because last time, I think I mentioned this being the F1 livery. This is actually a car that runs over in Europe, I believe, Ryan, and maybe you know more about that, but this is a real livery of a CrowdStrike, or at least a Mercedes-sponsored car that runs over on the European side of things.
I can't weigh in on that any further, I'm afraid.
Okay.
I have to plead ignorance on this one, but perhaps the next couple of weeks I will have more information. Certainly I hope so by the time I show up in Belgium at the end of the month.
Yeah, I was going to try to see. I'm not sure if this will break anything. Here, let's do this. Let's fly around and have a look at the names on above the window.
There we go.
Hey, look, George Kurtz, Colin Brown. That would make a lot of sense.
Okay, so
Yeah.
this must have been their livery from last year. And indeed, this is the same driver lineup that they will have this year, unless this is an early look at what they will be running this year. That's a possibility too, but I did just take a look at the provisional entry list a few moments ago, and Valentin Pierberg and Dominic Baumann are the listed co-drivers for George Kurtz and Colin Brown, who team up for SRO America here this year. So this is, if nothing else, the same 4 drivers listed on this car that will be competing at the end of the month, and perhaps these were the same 4 that raced last year, but to be honest with you, I don't remember that off the top of my head.
Well, that's an interesting little tidbit. I'm glad I took a moment to, I've never actually done the little fly around thing here, at least live, but that was a handy tool to play with, at least in the moment. So we'll head back to the camera views here and get ready for our pace lap. And again, in a 25-minute race, just over half the distance of what we just ran. And with the start running down towards Eau Rouge, I think the importance of getting single file cannot be understated, Ryan. Running through a very narrow, fast portion of the racetrack. I think if you can survive the first lap, you're going to be in a pretty good spot. But first lap can be wild a lot of the time. So see how many drivers can keep their excitement at a level that will sustain their race.
Yeah, I think that's true. And keep in mind, the tires won't be up to ideal operating temperature when the green flag flies, and it does take at least a half a lap, if not more, to get some of that temperature up, to get the kind of optimal grip out of the Pirellis, virtual or real, that you would be looking for. So that adds to some of the chaos potentially on the first lap. And quickly doubling back to our conversation about that paint scheme, I just went to the trusty old Wikipedia, and indeed, that does appear to be the car that raced at Spa last year under the SPS Automotive Performance banner for George Kurtz, Colin Brown, Dominic Baumann, and Valentin Pierberg. So, mystery solved.
Well, that's awesome. I knew I could count on you, Ryan. Even if you didn't know at the moment, you knew it within 2 minutes, which is good enough for me.
Half the battle is just knowing where you can go to find it.
Yeah, it's I got my hands full, so I'm glad you can go out there and take care of that for me. Trey Miller out front again in a fictional CrowdStrike livery, at least on the race car. Again, this is the Formula One pace car inspired livery. One of the other things about this this Evo kit that I really like is the fog lights on these Mercedes. They always look really cool. It's like a beehive or for wasps or something angry on the front. Very aggressive looking adjustment to an already aggressive looking car.
It's a good way of putting it. I have to agree. You really have to try hard to find a GT3 car that you don't like. I think there's something for everybody, but all of them bring something to the equation. I mean, and again, you've got so many different types of cars to choose from, but the Mercedes, I think, is ever popular. The Ferrari, I mean, it's a Ferrari. What more do you need to say? The Porsche is the classic 911. The Lamborghini is brilliant. I think the Huracan is only getting more and more attractive in each of its upgrades. So the McLaren we have been oohing and awing about for quite a while at this point, and it shoots fire, so that makes it even cooler, as we've discussed previously. So again, there's something for everybody, and that's even without mentioning the Acura or the Honda, depending on where in the world you are. We got one of those again at this race. So many great choices, so many cool cars, different soundtracks, different vantage points, different appearances. So it's one of the great things about GT racing today.
Certainly is. Ivan Lvov has retaken his front row starting spot, so looks like that has been shuffled. And yes, going the shooting flames piece, as I always say, Ryan, cars that shoot fire are better than cars that don't shoot fire, and that and the upward opening doors are two of the reasons why the McLaren is my favorite. But we don't have favorites.
Put that on your tombstone one day?
Yes. As long as it's not because I was in a car that shot too much fire.
Yeah, that's true. That's a little bit too much irony, perhaps.
Yeah, I can't quite commit to giving my car a burble tune where I'm just shooting money out the exhaust, especially living in Chicago, where premium fuel is $4.40 a gallon or something like that right now. Man, makes even a 12.5 gallon fill up an expensive day.
I'd imagine so. Good news is, don't need to worry about buying race fuel here in Assetto Corsa Competizione. As realistic as it is, at least it doesn't come with the same price tag. And we're about to turn 13 GT3 cars loose, really competitive qualifying field. Expect that to carry over into the race. We've got Mercedes and Ferrari on the front row, Ferrari and Porsche on the second. You can throw Lamborghini into the mix in the third row. Field's starting to come into alignment out of the final hairpin there.
Well, a little bit of shuffling here as we cross under what is traditionally the start-finish gantry. We're going to head through La Source and take the green flag on the run down to Eau Rouge. And it requires a lot of patience. This is when your heart rate starts to ramp up, whether in the sim or in the real world. And I think that's one of the things that I found sim racing doing the most. I actually get more nervous for a sim race than I do climbing into my own car at a DE event. Just there's a lot of pressure sometimes, even in a pressureless environment, at least with no real world issues or complications that can arise. So red and orange on the front row here, some warm colors on a warm day in the virtual Spa-Francorchamps for CrowdStrike Cup Virtual Racing League. This is the AM race, round number 3 of the 2021 season. We go racing next on August 11th at Brands Hatch. Tonight, it's racing in Belgium. Green flag flies towards Eau Rouge, 3 wide, 5 rows deep on the run down to the corner. Ooh, getting a little bit sideways as we head through here. It looks like the orange Ferrari drops back Lvov into 4th, but up front, Miller on the attack, or being attacked rather, by Mishra. As they run down to Lake Home here, Ryan, almost 3 wide.
I thought that Miller got the ideal start, but you're right. Immediately comes under assault. For now, able to hold off Campbell. I think that's who that was. Let's wait and see here.
Yeah, Mattioli and Mishra.
Mattioli and Mishra. Yep, Mattioli with the big move there at the start to get up to second, and here's some chaos a little bit further back.
Oh, one car off hard into the tire barrier on the right. That was one of the Porsches, I believe. That was the only other Porsche. That's Campbell, I believe. Oh, man, big crash here on the run down the hill. That was 5 or 6 cars that all got involved in that one. Let's have a quick look at how that formulated, just so we can see. There's the 9 of Hazewinkle. He's going to get into the side of the orange Ferrari, turn him around, and as well as Jackson Rusin and whoever's in the McLaren. I think that is Lee Plant, who also got turned around backwards. So not a great start for the drivers at the back half of the field. Up front, though, Miller driving away.
Yeah, he was, but that said, Mattioli not letting him get too far down the road, and Mishra right there too. A couple stalwarts in this series. Great to see them back, and again, Miller with that awesome start, but Mattioli, I think, has had the best start of all, able to jump a couple of spots, and I thought he might have a chance to challenge for the lead into Lake Home on that first lap. Hasn't been able to do that, but finds himself in prime position here, less than a second behind the race leader.
Mattioli finished 10th at our last round at Zandvoort. As I recall, he had to come down pit lane for either repairs or a penalty. I can't remember which. It was running better than 10th until that situation arose. So let's go back to Keith McVeigh, Chris Hazewinkle behind. They were close for a moment, trying to find the battles on the racetrack to follow up. There's a car around. That's Lvov, who was on the front row. He just got turned off the nose of another driver and tags. That's the number 6. Nope, that is Keith McVeigh in the. Who was that? The McLaren that just drove by. Gleason. Oh, more trouble down in turn 1. McVeigh gets turned by Hazewinkle in La Source. Caution flag waving, and now cleared again. So McVeigh will drop down a couple spots.
I do love the inclusion of the virtual corner workers.
Whoa.
That is a really nice addition. Somebody goes on a spin and through Radion. Mishra. Yeah, who had dropped from 3rd to 4th on that first lap, and I didn't quite see what happened. That time it looked like just didn't quite get the entry right, maybe a bit too much curb, and around he goes. That is about as lucky as you can get with a spin in that corner. It's rare you get away unscathed.
I was going to say, that was about the luckiest thing I think will have happen to him all day long, to get out of there without crashing. That was pretty good. Meanwhile, here's Hazewinkle crossing him up now. He's still losing some spots, trying to regather himself after that big moment. Thankfully, it's dry here today. I know, Ryan, that this track traditionally can be very scary in the wet. We ran a 6-hour race here in the GT World Challenge America Esports Championship at the tail end of maybe it was the beginning of, no, it was the tail end of 2020. And we ran all 6 hours in the rain, and that was very scary to watch, even in the sim world.
Yeah, and it brought back memories for me from my trip to Spa, where I worked the overnight down in the pit lane for the TV broadcast. I think we had a spin there in the back of that shop, by the way. A purple car, I think, went around at the entry to Pujon, and indeed it was McVeigh. But I spent most of that time just being soaked by the famous rain in this part of the country, and it was in some ways a fitting experience. I would have felt cheated if I had gone to Spa and it hadn't rained some, but maybe they took that to the extreme, and funnily enough, it came on the heels of the 2 hottest days in Belgian history, which happened in succession, one after the other, and then they follow that up with just incessant rain that unfortunately led to a lengthy red flag. So anyway, these are all the thoughts going through my mind as we were calling the virtual race. It was bringing back a lot of memories for me.
I think I'd want a refund if I didn't get rain at Spa. It feels like
Right.
that's part of the experience. Maybe it would be less fun if I was on the ground running around doing Ryan Marine duties, but up in a nice cool dry booth somewhere, that'd be great. Or on a TV at
I'll
home,
tell
I
you.
guess. I guess that doesn't quite convey the experience.
No, but it was fun, don't get me wrong, and it was a wonderful experience. So I encourage anyone to come check out the race, and if it rains, don't go home, don't go back to the hotel, stick it out. That's part of the experience for sure. And just along this road that we're on here on Kemmel, off to the left, there's some nice beer stands that I would encourage people to check out, as well as the traditional frites that you can get in Belgium that come complimentary with mayonnaise, which is an interesting choice, but win in Rome or win in Belgium, I suppose.
I find mayonnaise to be a pretty versatile condiment, Ryan, so I'm not opposed to that at all.
You fit right in.
Oh, man. All right. Keeping an eye on, I think this is the 16 to Dave Lowy in the very gold Lamborghini Huracan GT3 Evo. This is a pretty striking livery, to say the least. I feel like you see a lot of them on the road looking like this. Or chromed out or something, but I think it looks good.
And this is a race that means a lot to Lamborghini to run at Spa, to try and win the 24. They've come with big-time factory involvement in years past. It's going to be scaled back somewhat this year, but still should be something to keep an eye on, and this is certainly one that they have circled as a race that they need to claim victory in at one point or another as part of this GT3 program that has grown rapidly in recent years. There has been Lamborghini presence in GT racing for a while, going back to the Gallardo, but that was built by Ryder Engineering. That wasn't really a Lamborghini involvement, and that's changed with this Huracan that you're looking at here. This is the Evo version of the GT3 Huracan, and that has proven to be a really sharp weapon in lots of different series, winning big-time races in the US, in Europe, in Asia, and it's remarkable that the motorsports arm of Lamborghini has been so successful in a short amount of time, going up against established brands like Porsche, BMW, Mercedes, and others.
And it's a great looking car too. Kind of got that traditional Lamborghini wedge shape, which kind of adorns the walls of every kid growing up. Starting all the way back with, I guess, even farther back than the Diablo, but I think the Diablo for me was the first Lamborghini I ever remember, thinking was super cool. Then it, as the Aventador came out in the 2000s, that kind of became the halo car, and then the Huracan and Aventador were kind of sold side by side. And now they just announced the final version of the Aventador, the last V12 Lamborghini probably ever in the changing landscape of the automotive world. But that's a sad day, I think. But again, spectacular machines. And while they have a tendency to be a lot of motor, I think the V10 being an outlier in a world of V8s, V6s, and now more and more 4 cylinders, I find them very inspiring to listen to and just be around. More cylinders isn't really the answer for speed. We've seen that in the racing world kind of develop over time. But something about that V10 scream still gets to me every time I hear one.
Definitely. And again, it shares a lot of the architecture, car and engine, with what the Audi R8 brings to the table, sister brands under the Volkswagen umbrella. And that has helped them, I think, in their meteoric rise, that they could lean on a sister brand to help get them up to speed. But To your point about the car, it does sound great, and actually there is a distinct difference between the Lamborghini and the Audi, despite the similarities. And so I think that is noteworthy, and I am sad that we're seeing. So, oh boy,
Trouble
we'll
for
get back
the
to that in a moment.
Sorry, Ryan, we just had trouble for our race leader. He has lost a significant amount of ground. He's dropped all the way down to 6th. Here's a look at it. This is heading down towards Pujon, and I think he must have had an off. There's Mattioli behind him. He was reeling him in. They come into Pujon here, and I think what you're going to see is he's probably going to get off track. Yes, see, the car's already sideways. Big slide. Overcorrects. Oh, hits Mattioli, sends him off the racetrack. And looks like Miller, with significant damage, got back rolling, but only in 6th. And as we are watching this replay, I just saw Mattioli drop down a couple positions, and now John Willemin has taken the lead away as we catch back up here. So lots of shuffling in the last couple moments. The 95 car is now your race leader in the orange Ferrari. That was a crazy half a lap there, Ryan.
Yeah, that was. To my eye, at least, I think we saw Miller catch some of that curb on the outside and turn in. And you want to get out there if you can. This is another look at, this is what happened a few moments ago, correct?
Yeah, it's just catching up. There it goes. Now it's updated. You see the Lamborghini up in 2nd now, Dave Lowe, but Willemin is the current race leader after all that shuffling.
Yeah, so again, I think we saw Miller catch some of that curbing on the outside into Pujon. You want to get out wide on entry if you can for the best angle, but I have found that that curbing can be very upsetting to the car under braking, and it seemed like he got up on that. The car was sideways even as he was turning into the corner, and I think that's where we saw the problem arise, and really unfortunate for Mattioli, who was a victim, no question, of circumstance there, and has suffered some damage and dropped back to 4th, but that puts Willemin and Lowe here in a really strong position to battle it out for the lead. We've got top 2 running within about a half a second of one another.
And getting even tighter every moment. And talking about the curbing specifically, and I went back and mentioned this, earlier in the pro race, but we were talking about apex curbs at that point. On the exit, that we're on right now here with Lowe on board, I always am concerned with these, especially in the wet, but even in the dry, as you see the race leader go off into the gravel trap, open up the door, squeezes down the inside and takes the lead away. Even in the dry, the curbing is maybe it's not necessarily less grippy because a lot of these higher grade tracks will have specific paint for the curbing that is as grippy as the asphalt, but it still takes temperature differently and it's still a different surface. And when you're entering a corner at 150 miles an hour, if you're loading one side of the car on a different surface than the other side of the car, that can pretty easily create moments, should we say, in the car. So there are places to use the curbs and places not to, and I think on the entrance to a high-speed corner, I think I'd want all 4 tires to be squarely on the pavement.
Yep, good point for sure. That was a slick move, I thought, from Lowe there to get to the inside while Willemin was sliding sideways right in front of him. That was a narrow escape through a small gap. That could have aimed it very differently, but he comes away looking like a hero and now is out in front by over a second. And look who's sitting back in 3rd. Lvov, who had the good qualifying effort, then dropped back to the back at the start, all of a sudden finds himself here in this 3rd place and running down the top 2. He's been making some inroads over the last few laps.
Almost a full second quicker than the race leader last time around. He had a podium finish back at Zandvoort about a month ago, so Lvov certainly has the speed to run where he is. Where he is. I just had my sound. Sorry about that. I just heard a really strange sound. I don't know what that was.
I didn't hear it, so I think the folks at home were spared. So that's good news.
It sounded like it was in my headphones. It sounded like there was like a gunshot sound, and then my headphones went quiet for a second. Very strange.
Disconcerting.
It scared me.
I could hear that.
Man, my heart rate just went through the roof. Either way, going back to Lvov, he has the pace to run up front, and he continues to do so. So we'll see if he can reel in Willemin. It's a 5.5-second gap, 11.5 minutes to go, so some time left to get it done.
Yeah, I think there's enough time. We haven't seen him make as many inroads as I was expecting on this lap, so maybe I'm a bit too sanguine on those chances. We'll see. Here's Mattioli, who's dropped another spot. He was 4th just a little bit ago, now running in 5th, so maybe the damage sustained is proving to be problematic. I suspect that car in a straight line is not nearly as strong as it would normally be, and you covered this earlier, Kyle, that the Mercedes, that's not its strong suit anyway in a straight line. So now if that is handicapped further by this damage, running a little bit wide right there as well, that's something that could run afoul of track limits, I suspect. But I think if he doesn't have the straight line speed, he might be a sitting duck. And look at this, we see Mishra going on the attack.
Yeah, there goes Pratik Mishra on by, and we'll take the spot away from Mattioli. That damage is certainly going to be a problem, especially on the longer straights. And aerodynamically, these cars are essentially prepped to be very, very slippery, and any sort of deviation from the specified design is probably not going to be helpful.
Very rarely does sticking the car in the fence help the performance of the car, but it has happened in the past from time to time. Don't think that's the case though here. And Mishra, another one who's on a bit of a recovery drive after some issues early. This is another driver with a lot of pace and should be able to charge up a couple of spots. Does not look like Lvov was able to make much progress. In fact, lost about a second on that last lap. So, and it's good news for our current top two, who run within a second of one another, and I think can be quite content in the fact that, barring a major mishap, they will finish 1-2 and they can settle the order between the two of them.
So 1 second between the two race leaders. Lvov about 6.7 back. He was gaining for a little bit, but it seems like he's dropped a little, at least last time around. Trey Miller in 7th. Understeer there, he's got similar damage. Rodney Campbell, he was the driver that was off on the opening lap in that corner right there that we just passed at the exit of the cone. Found his way into the tire barrier, has some minor damage, but that doesn't seem to be affecting his times all that much. He just ran his best lap of the day at 2:24.684.
Well, that's good news, because that looked like a pretty big impact to my eye, at least, there on that opening lap. And he was caught in the midst of a lot of chaos. Just lost the back end, it looked like, and went sliding off to the inside. And glad to hear that the damage wasn't so significant that there isn't any speed left in the car. Clearly still finding some performance and running solidly mid-pack with 10 minutes or so to go. So still plenty of time for something to happen to some of the folks up ahead. Maybe you can benefit from that and score a solid top 10 result.
Keeping an eye on the lap times. On the timing and scoring on my end, I can see who's up, who's green, who's red, and that time Dave Lowy is green as he comes across the start-finish line. That was his best lap of 2:21.564, a full second better than second place John Williman, so he has found some pace, and the clean air is helping here, Ryan. No disturbances in front, 8 minutes to go. If he just keeps doing this, he'll be in a good spot.
And the nice thing, too, is with the race distance being as short as it is and the lap being as long as it is around Spa, I don't think there's anything to worry about in terms of that traffic. So it should be nice, clear running the rest of the way. He can control the pace from the front. He's built a big enough gap where I don't think the slipstream is going to come into effect in any kind of major way either here for the rest of this run. So that's also going to be very beneficial to trying to keep that lead. Definitely a nice, strong performance, able to capitalize on the mishap that we saw a few laps ago. Able to slip through that and hasn't looked back since.
So it's trying to pull away here in the last under 8 minutes to go. Joe Mattioli, we mentioned earlier, just checking back in on him. His lap times, just for reference, his last lap was a 2:26.0 compared to his best of a 2:22.185. So similarly to Zandvoort about a month ago, where he ran 10th and was running much better until then. Running up inside the top three. He was running in second when that crash happened. And again, it's going to hinder what otherwise was going to be a very successful day. So that has to be frustrating, but that's the way racing goes sometimes, right?
No question, and you got to put that behind you and just salvage the best that you can. Keep in mind we've got points on the line for the season-long championship, not just for the individual, but for the teams as well. So that is incentive, I suppose, to keep plugging along. You don't know what's going to happen in front of you. Maybe you can grab a spot or two before this thing is all said and done. And we get to the end of the season, Kyle, it's not unheard of for that kind of perseverance to be rewarded with an extra spot in the final point standings, maybe even help to win a championship. You just don't know.
Could be. Every point counts, every second counts, like CrowdStrike says. How about this? Martin Westergaard Lassen is, wow, I butchered that name. Westergaard Lassen in the number 111. Here comes Pratik Mishra up the inside. This is for fourth, they touch. Oh man, all the way using every bit of the runoff room to pull the car back on track, but that's why they paved it there, Ryan. Gave Westergaard Lassen a chance to catch it.
And it was a great save. That was a bold move from Mishra, if I do say so, in a place where you really don't see a lot of passing. That's not a great place to be side by side. I think both drivers could have lifted to get themselves out of that situation. Neither did, and they're both lucky to be able to continue on.
So with 5 minutes and 35 seconds, I'm going to guess that that's about 3 laps worth of racing. And the battles have sort of subsided for now. Up front, it's still about a second and a half. Although John Willemin gained a half a second on the race leader last time by, so it could still flip the other direction if Willemin continues that pace. But I think that was just a momentary lapse of pace by the race leader.
Yeah, I think it's going to take a major mistake to bring Willemin totally into the equation. Now, it could happen, no doubt about that. It's not out of the realm of possibility. But the ball is in the court of Lowy, the race leader, to hold on to that spot and just put down solid laps. They don't have to be the best laps he's ever run. They just need to be good enough to keep this Ferrari at bay, and I think he's got plenty of pace to be able to do exactly that.
Well, Willemin has had a heck of a day in this orange Ferrari. There's a handful of them between Willemin and the other Ivan Lvov in the 918. Slightly different shades, more graphics on the number 95, both running second and third. Should also note, talking about the team points, white background number boards. Have a look at CrowdStrike, first, second, and fifth, with AWS third and fourth. So I think CrowdStrike's in a pretty good spot to grab some points for the AmChamp championship this time around. But Lvov and Mishra holding up the fort for AWS. That's always good to see. And look at the Ferraris. 4 out of the top 5 are in the Ferrari 488.
Well, we talked about it a little bit at the Open, kind of speculating why perhaps the Ferrari was the popular choice. There were a lot of Ferraris racing in the pro race earlier. It's just a pretty stout car, solid car. The mid-engine configuration has plenty of benefits. The 488 has proven to be a very potent weapon throughout GT3 competitions globally. So it seems like that's transitioned down into the sim racing world. Lots of good setups floating around on the internet out there to help these drivers, especially those in the AM ranks that probably aren't doing as much setup development themselves. And the results have been, well, you can see them on the screen right there with 4 Ferraris in the top 5. But the one thing that won't make the folks at Maranello happy is there's an Italian car in P1 and it's not a Ferrari.
Well, it's the Raging Bull versus the Prancing Horse at the top of the order. And right now the Bull's winning. Kind of brute forcing its way to the front with the others kind of getting each other knocked out of the way. Mercedes in 6th and 7th, and it's the Porsche of Campbell in 8th. Jackson Ruthven's Acura in 9th, and Jay Gleason and Plant in McLaren's. Then a Porsche and a Ferrari to wrap up the rest of the field. And I think the Porsches need to get together because they're breaking up the manufacturers being paired off right now. It's bothering me, but I'm not sure that was what they came here to do. They came here to win. And Campbell running 8th right now. 2 minutes and 28 seconds. Next time by will be coming to the white. And again, looks like Lowe went a little bit faster. Actually went a little quicker than his, a little 200 slower than his best lap. So he's still on it, Ryan. Running his PBs towards the end of the race. And that's just a sign of a well set up car and a driver that is continuously learning.
Definitely, just getting faster and faster, more and more comfortable as the race goes along. So that is encouraging news, and a nice solid run out in front right now. The race firmly in control, coming to the white flag here in just a few short moments.
Really impressed with this field after the initial opening lap shenaniganry, which happens even at the highest level of motorsport. This has been a very clean race. We haven't had a lot of car-to-car contact since then, and drivers have been lapping very well. I think overall, I mean, we have only a couple second gap. I mean, first down to ninth is only separated by about 2 seconds worth of lap time. That's one of the closest AM fields I think we've ever had as we start our last lap here, Ryan.
Yeah, you might be right. So we'll keep an eye on how this as this continues to develop. But really solid run here out in front. Nice clean battle at the front of this field. Lowy for sure was a beneficiary of some contact between the top two at the time. Made a bold move to sneak through and avoid that potential disaster, and has been able to withstand the pressure ever since.
So last time down the Kemmel Straight with the two race leaders, Lvov in third of the 918, then Pratik Mishra in fourth. Now, he is probably going to be fairly happy that he's had a decent day because he is currently leading the points right now. Came into the night with 55 points. That was 9 over the top of Jay Gleason. Gleason's down in 10th. Mishra's 4th. So this will be a gain. Trey Miller, who was 3rd in the standings, is running in 7th. This will certainly be a fairly sizable points gain for Mishra, and I think he'll be happy with a 4th, even if it's just shy of the podium.
The frustration is that it could have been more. It's a great recovery to get back up to 4th. You can see the last spot on the podium just up the road in Lvov. Not sure he's close enough to be able to catch him on this lap. I suspect the answer to that is no, but that said, on one hand, yes, it's been a nice points day, especially when the others are struggling, but what might have been if there hadn't been some issues early on, maybe you finished 2nd instead of 4th, that's even more points gained. That's a tough rabbit hole to go down, but most drivers will do it at the end of an event, and I don't know. I'm curious what Pratik will take away from this one, because on one hand, it's a nice job to get to 4th and score some solid points, but on the other hand, it could have been more. However, an interesting development here as you see the DT next to Williman's name in 2nd. That's a drive-through penalty.
Oh, man.
And
on the last lap.
Yes. So that's going to have to be converted into a time penalty. That will be costly for Williman, and very good news then for Lvov and Mishra and others. And I think provisionally that should put Mishra up close to the podium.
Checkered flag waves for David Lowe in the number 16 across the line. He wins in the Lamborghini here in the CrowdStrike Cup Virtual Racing League AM race. John Williman 2nd. Provisionally, 82nd time penalty. Ryan, that is enormous.
Yeah, that is about half a lap, but that's what it would take to drive through. This is an extremely long pit lane in the endurance format. They have to use the new F1 pit lane plus the old classic pit lane, which is on the other side of the source. So it is a long trundle down those pits, so that explains the lengthiness of that time penalty, and that's going to be crippling.
Yeah, we have yet to see how this is going to shuffle out, but I think this comes down to track limits violations, Ryan. We spoke about it briefly in the pro race earlier. When you run out wide over the red and yellow curbing, anytime you go out there, you have the potential to be considered off track and gaining time illegally, and you get a certain amount of those. I think you get 2 or 3 freebies, and then they start giving you penalties. And for Williman, went off track one too many times, and that is going to cripple his position. As soon as the last driver comes across the line, we're going to know where he shuffles out to be, which I think we're waiting on. Oh, we're not waiting on anybody. We're just waiting for the session to complete. We'll see how it shuffles him, but it's going to hurt.
No doubt. That is really disappointing. Drove a great race. I'm sorry to see that the hard work was for naught. That has to be a tough pill to swallow.
Waiting for, that's it. So checkered flag, we're waiting for one more car to cross the line. And now it looks like Williman has been scored unofficially in 9th place. So from 2nd to 9th, that is crippling, as you mentioned. Lvov 2nd, Mishra 3rd, Westergaard Lassen in 4th, and Campbell wrapping up the rest of your top 5. We'll get you the leaderboard here in just a moment to take a look at it for yourself. But Ryan, a really fun race there. Again, we saw some pretty intense competition at the beginning and a couple issues here and there, but for the most part, very clean race. Here's a look at the results.
Yeah, very fun racing, night of racing, I should say, both pro and am. Love this track. It really brings out the best in drivers and cars, and in the sim too. So really fun to see these cars and drivers put their skills to the test at a track like Spa. I think it really played out to give us a great show in both of our races tonight.
Well, we hear the fireworks going off here at the virtual Spa. I got to go and find out why my headset wanted to hurt me a little bit earlier in the night. I don't know what that was. It sounded like it was coming from the sim, and if you didn't hear it in the mic, it couldn't have been from outside, but very strange. Either way, I'm going to look into that. Again, congratulations to the winners, and of course, it was Josh Staffen that has swept all 3 rounds of the Pro Championship so far. We've got 3 rounds remaining, and the next one up is going to be at Brands Hatch on August 11th, followed thereafter by September 22nd, Barcelona, October 20th at Paul Ricard for the last couple rounds of the CrowdStrike Cup Virtual Racing League in Ryan. We've got some real racing between now and our next event, so we've got a couple rounds coming. We've got GT America at Nashville in a couple weeks. Then we've got Road America a few weeks after that, and then we head into basically the tail end of the season where it all culminates at the Indianapolis 8-hour towards the end of the year, Ryan. So lots of exciting things, both in the sim world here for the CrowdStrike Cup Virtual Racing League, as well as the real world, including next weekend, the 24 Hours of Spa, where you will be, and so will Colin Brown and George Kurtz for CrowdStrike Racing.
Yeah, it's a great setting, great race. Hope folks check it out. It's all available live streaming around the world on the GT World YouTube channel. Some of the names that you're familiar with racing in the States, some of the voices from the broadcast should be familiar too, as you mentioned there, Kyle. So can't wait to get over there. Really looking forward to it as ever, and really excited as well to be back doing more sim racing broadcasts throughout the course of the year, and looking forward to the next round at Brands Hatch for the CrowdStrike Cup.
Well, an exciting night of racing. Thanks so much for joining us. We'll see you again on August 11th for Brands Hatch over the UK for round 4 of the CrowdStrike Cup Virtual Racing League. I'm Kyle Hire with Ryan Marine. We'll see you next time.